welcome to Ag PhD. I'm Darren Hefty.
And I'm Brian Hefty. Thanks for joining us today. We've got a great show for you. We're going to talk about how you work with your landlords, especially in these changing economic times that we have here on the farm. There are a lot of things to consider. We've had questions over the last few years about tiling and fertilizer replacement and many others, so we wanted to discuss that today.
Now, one other thing you may talk about is disease control, because stripe rust is again expected to be a major issue in wheat, but there are other diseases to talk about too. We'll discuss disease control in wheat on today's show.
Well, diseases can definitely hurt a person's yield, but what could be even worse than that is weeds, especially if you've got our Weed of the Week. We'll show you how to control it later in the show, but first, here's this week's Farm Basics.
Farm Basics is brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide from Bayer. The most reliable weed management solution, Liberty Link and Liberty herbicide are the link to efficient row crop production and sustainable weed management.
When Darren and I were growing up on the farm, we had to work around augers, and granted, the augers were a little smaller than what we're working with today. We had a lot of 4-inch augers back then, and I don't know how we ever got anything done, Darren, with those little augers. But Dad was always talking to us about safety with the augers. It was very dangerous to work around augers. And during our Farm Basics time today, we wanted to talk just a little about augers and about their counterpart, belt veyors.
Well, augers are certainly a nice invention, and to move grain and other materials, having the auger worked quite well for us. But you know, Brian, we run into situations like this fall where we've got really dry grain. You know, the corn was dry coming out of the field, the soybeans were dry coming out of the field, and augers just crack up too much of our grain.
Okay, so there are, for grain handling purposes, if farmers are concerned about cracking that grain, there are a few things that they can do with these augers. So basically, with the auger, there is metal flighting inside of it, and it's going to spin, and as it spins, it's going to move that grain up the auger. Well, anyway, the first thing that we always tell our people on the farm is you've got to run the auger full. The more full it is, the fewer cracks you're going to have. Secondly, there are some people that will actually put some bristle flighting, which would basically be nylon or some type of plastic material, on the outside of that flighting inside the auger. They can't move the grain as quickly or move as much grain, but it's much easier on the grain.
Well, and easier yet, Brian, would be to switch to the belt veyor. And a belt veyor is just that. It's a rubber belt conveyor. And it sometimes will have some little sections on it to hold grain, some little cups or something like that to hold the grain on it. Yeah, or baffles. And sometimes it won't. It just depends on what material you're trying to move as to what kind of pattern they'd put on the belt. But with the belt conveyor, you're not spinning that grain around and basically grinding it against the sides of an auger. It's just laying there on top of a belt, and you aren't going to crack up very much grain except for on the discharge end. Now on the discharge end, if you're running that belt conveyor pretty fast, it really slings that grain off the end. Now if you're going to sling it into something metal, like a lot of times you'll see at the end a metal chute, well, it just hits that metal at the end and cracks almost as bad as it does with an auger. So you have to be careful about what the end of that belt conveyor looks like. Now some will put some baffles on the end or some rubber on the end of it to try and lessen the force of the grain against the end of the conveyor. So there's a number of different ways you can do it. And you certainly could have no end on the conveyor and just sling it off the end and have it land on a pile of grain.
So you might say, it sounds like that belt conveyor is going to crack the grain a lot less. Why wouldn't everybody use a belt conveyor? Well, the main two reasons why are, number one, the belt conveyor takes a little bit more adjustment. You have to be kind of monitoring that a little bit, and you have to know what you're doing in order to adjust it. And secondly, it costs a little bit more than a traditional auger. Well, once again, we wanted to talk today a little about augers versus belt veyors. The safety on both has gotten a lot better over the years because of different safety mechanisms that they have on these machines. But they are still a little bit dangerous for farmers to work with. Farmers, we certainly encourage them to be careful around both augers and belt conveyors. Belt conveyors are a little bit easier on the grain, but they do cost a little bit more than traditional augers.
Well, choosing the right conveyor or auger certainly isn't going to help you control our Weed of the Week. Can you identify this week's weed?
For years, FarmLogic has been the easiest and most convenient way to keep up with your farming operations. Well, it just got better. Introducing FarmPad for your phone. You always have your phone with you, so entering records as they happen is as easy as a touch of a button. Chemical database, GPS, service records, and more. When you do it on the farm, Save it on your phone and it's backed up forever. Call or visit farmlogic.com for a free trial and find out why FarmLogic is the best decision tool for the farm.
You can't fill a barrel any fuller than its lowest stave, and your crops can't do any better than the nutrient that's in shortest supply. Your yield potential is only as good as the weakest nutrient in your fertilizer program. Give your crops more than just NPK. Prescription apply all the micronutrients your crop needs, each one customized for your crop's potential. MicroLink, linking yield to potential.
For lower cost, higher production, Mandaco Agri leads with versatility unmatched. Twister is the vertical tillage unit for no-till as well as conventional tillage. Twister's ease of maintenance is forgiving in rocks and has contour conformity equaling zero downtime. Our hydraulically adjusted coulter angles make residue management easier, less costly. Spring or fall, the Mandaco Twister vertical tillage unit is the new leader. See your Mandaco Agri dealer. Visit northcountrymarketing.biz or call.
Looking to maximize yield? Quick Roots is a microbial seed inoculant that allows the plant root to explore a greater volume of soil, the key to higher yields. Quick Roots continues to generate yield response on corn, soybeans, wheat, and more. Quick Roots is applied to the seeds so the live microorganisms go right to work, enhancing seedling vigor, increasing the uptake of certain nutrients, including NPK, and expanding root volume. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Call TJ Technologies or your local dealer and get your Quick Roots today.
There are more mouths to feed than ever before. What are farmers doing to meet the challenge? They're using agronomically designed equipment from Case IH. Our Quadtrac technology, soil management, and planting systems are designed to foster a better growing environment that helps farmers maximize yield potential. And our deep understanding of agriculture is preparing them for the challenges ahead. Will you be ready?
I'm ready.
Go to caseih.com to learn more.
One of the most important things on the farm is your relations with your landlords, because quite often you don't have enough capital, especially when you're a young farmer, to own all of your land. So usually you're going to have to deal with others who do own the ground. And what type of rent arrangement will you have? And what other arrangements will you make with the landlord? How are you going to make this thing work long term? We wanted to discuss that a little bit today.
Well, Brandon, the land we're standing on right here, we don't own.
Nope.
And so we have to work with somebody else. We've been farming this land for years. We've got a good long-term relationship and all those things. But you know what? Maybe in a couple of years we won't be farming it. Who knows where things are going to go. But there are things we want to do to this land to try and make it better than it was last year. And if you want to accomplish that on ground that you're renting, it requires a good relationship with your landlord.
On this ground that we're standing on, yeah, we farmed it for, I don't even know how long, 30 years now, something like that. But we don't have a long-term arrangement with this particular landowner. And now we've switched everything to cash rent. Used to do share rent, but now everything is cash rent. So if we put fertilizer out here on this field that we're not going to use this year, we're hoping that we're going to continue farming this ground for long term, and other investments, other improvements we make to the ground. That's one of the biggest challenges, in my opinion, that landowners face today is, yes, you can go out and try to get top dollar for your rent, but what other stipulations do you have in that rent contract? So for example, how about organic matter replacement or removal or buildup or degradation? Are we lowering over time the organic matter levels in the soil is what I'm saying. How about fertility removal? So if we pull 200 bushel per acre corn off of this field, well, we just removed 76 pounds of actual phosphate and 60 pounds of K2O potassium. Are we replacing those things? So these are considerations that you as a landlord have to look at, and as a renter, from our perspective, we want to make the ground better, like Darren said, but by the same token, we got a lot of dollars that we're going to put out to make the ground better.
You know, you hear all these stipulations that Brian thinks about. I just wonder who's going to rent Brian's ground someday when he retires, and what kind of contract.
Am I going to be tough?
It's going to be a 100-page contract they're going to have to sign,
well, no,
and all
seriously.
these evaluations along the way.
Yeah, but I am dead serious. You've got to think about these things, and I do, because if it's ground that I own, I want that ground to continue being better over time. I don't want it to go backwards. I just know on our own farm, we've picked up a couple new pieces of ground in the last 3 years, and I can just tell you those couple of fields were awful because they'd been cash rented for many years, and nothing against the farmers that had them before, because they had 1-year leases on the ground. They hated to build the soil up when they knew they might lose it at some point. So, you know, there's got to be this working relationship that we're talking about with the landlord. It's got to go both ways.
We say it all the time on our show that we all have to be advocates for agriculture. We all have to say, you know, hey, look, this is what's great about farming. This is what's really happening with farming. The challenge is not many of us are great communicators, and you know, that's a tough thing. I know some farmers that actually send a newsletter out to their landlords with pictures of what they're doing on the farm, and explanation of, hey, here's why we're doing the strip tillage. Here's the reason that we switched to no-till on our farm. Here's what our fertility program is and how we're handling things. And they send it out to all their landlords, so the landlords, number one, know that, okay, this other landlord isn't getting treated better than me. We're all being treated the same. And number two, just so people kind of stay a little bit in touch, because if you don't inform non-farming people about what you're doing, where are they going to learn about farming from? They aren't.
Okay, here's kind of where our discussion stemmed from today. When most farmers are raising soybeans, they spend $25 an acre on fertilizer, if that. We're investing an extra $125. So now you take what the rent is plus $125 above and beyond what anybody else is doing, and now he's getting top rent, isn't he? In fact, beyond top rent, right? Well, yeah, I guess I didn't even figure that. Well, exactly, and that's my whole point. And unless we as farmers have these conversations with our landowners and their family members, their lawyers, that kind of thing, then of course they're just going to assume, well, I have to get top dollar on things. No, you want to make sure that your land is getting top dollar. And that comes in two different ways. One, building up the land, and two, the cash that you're going to get.
All right, let's take the hot topic right now, Brian, because there's a lot of farmers that I talk to every day that say, hey, I want to do some tiling in this ground. It'll really improve that land, but you know what? I don't own the land. How do I work with the landowner when I'm going to make a long-term improvement to their ground?
Sure, I will just tell you that we've worked with every landlord that we've got in our operation, and basically it comes down to one of two ways. Method number one is the landlord pays for everything, the tiling and our labor to put the tile in, and then we increase the rent automatically. And what we've done, and this is not to say that everybody has to do this, but we've just taken 10% of whatever the bill was. So for example, if we invested between our labor and everything else, and we have the landlord pay $400 per acre for tiling, then we raise the rent 10% of that, so $40 an acre. Okay, so pretty simple. Method number two is where we pay for everything and the landlord holds the rent for us over a fixed long-term lease, like let's call it a 5 or a 7-year lease, and the rent stays exactly the same. That allows us time to recover our investment.
Well, we've actually, and Brian said, we've worked with all our landlords about doing some tiling on their particular piece of ground. We've had some of those landlords come to us and say, I want mine done first. I'm really excited about this. I know it's going to help my ground. And you know, some come with one cash situation where, hey, they want to pay for everything, labor and everything. They just want it clean and easy, and I'm just going to pay for everything and I'm going to raise your rent. And others say, well, man, you know, I really want this to happen, but I'm on a fixed income and I can't afford to pay extra money right now.
Yep, the main thing that I try to stress to any of the landlords that we work with, and just farmers in general, is look, we're trying to make the ground better long term. Tiling will absolutely do that, and not only can we pay you more cash rent once that tile is in the ground, because your ground is now obviously going to produce more, your land instantly went up in value. Whatever you put in for tile, basically your land is probably worth that much more going forward. So these are just a couple of the major things that we're constantly talking to our landlords about, and I assume you are too if you're farming. And if you're a landlord out there, we want you to think about these things. Think about what's it going to take to make your ground better long term, and what kind of arrangement do you have with the tenants on your farm today. And I'd at least be discussing with them, what is their fertility plan? What is their tillage plan? What's their plan to build organic matter in your soil? It's not just about the cash rent. I know getting the cash is nice, but you want to try to leave that ground in better shape long term. And obviously the person renting the ground has to have a little extra money in order to be able to invest that money into your ground.
One other thing we didn't even get into, Brian, when it comes to landlords is keeping the weeds under control. Can you identify this week's Weed of the Week?
Back in 1966, Advanced Drainage Systems, Inc. was the first company to start manufacturing plastic agricultural drainage pipe in the United States. And today, ADS continues our leadership with superior pipe production and service capabilities. Our roots are firmly entrenched in the agriculture industry, and we're committed to helping farmers grow their business. With 54 manufacturing plants and 24 distribution yards throughout the world, you can count on ADS and our green striped pipe to be there when you need us. Advanced Drainage Systems, the green striped pipe you can count on.
Only the Liberty Link system combines the yield potential growers want with reliable weed control they need.
The performance of the beans I've been really satisfied with. Overall, the bean had a 64 bushel average. The full season beans we grew averaged 70, so I was extremely satisfied with the performance of the bean, the quality of the bean.
I think that we have to have the Liberty Link system to keep growing beans in the South and probably in the whole nation, or else the resistance issue is going to just take many acres out of production. And that's one reason that I've incorporated the Liberty Link system into my farming program, is to where I don't end up with a resistance problem. They've yielded right with conventional varieties, Roundup varieties. As far as yield and ease of use, I haven't had any problem at all. They worked out real good.
Brought to you by the Liberty Link trait and Liberty herbicide. Your link to higher yield starts with outstanding weed control.
In the world of four-wheel drive tractors, there is no name more powerful than Steiger. The newest addition to the powerful Case IH Steiger line is the Steiger Rowtrack, available at Titan Machinery. Designed for row crop use, the Rowtrack provides more maneuverability and reduces compaction while maintaining power and performance. It's available with 16, 18, or 24-inch tracks for row spacing as narrow as 20 inches. Visit your Titan Machinery dealer today to learn more about the Case IH Steiger Rowtrack. Titan Machinery, better solutions.
Today's number is 3. You can see it everywhere, and it can stand for almost anything. But when it comes to protecting the nitrogen that feeds your crops, 3 is the special number that sets Nutrisphere N, Nitrogen Fertilizer Manager, apart, because Nutrisphere N is proven to reduce all 3 forms of nitrogen loss, which adds up to keeping more nitrogen and yield where it belongs. So ask for Nutrisphere N, the stabilizer that fights nitrogen loss 3 ways.
You know, the big thing about wheat diseases, Brian, is when are they going to hit? There's early season diseases, there's ones that come in the middle of the summer, and then of course there's some that come late after heading. So how do you put together that disease program, and where do you start?
Okay, well, in my opinion, it's all going to start with seed treatment. And you can tell the big sigh that I had there, because I just say, oh man, every year I know we're going to have disease in wheat. I know we're going to have it early. I know we're going to have it mid-season. I know we're going to have it late. Unfortunately, that's just the way it is in wheat. We have a lot of disease issues that pop up. Perhaps the worst one that has arrived here in just the last few years has been stripe rust. Now, rust typically does not survive in the northern part of the country. It has to blow in from the south every year, and this particular version of rust, stripe rust, I think is the worst.
Well, it did survive last winter. We had a really mild winter and the temperatures didn't get so cold, and we had enough cover out there that the stripe rust made it through, and we had some issues, especially in the Pacific Northwest. But you know, it's one of those things that I can't guarantee you that's not going to happen again this year. So you have to be prepared to control stripe rust, whether it's early or late. The biggest thing to take out of this segment that we're talking about right now is that our fungicides that you're going to spray foliar on wheat, well, they just aren't that good. And you have to get these diseases stopped before you even see them on the plant if you want to be the most effective.
In other words, what Darren is saying here is fungicides are preventative. And occasionally you'll hear some fungicide manufacturer talk about how their fungicide has curative properties. Well, it does, but slight curative properties. You can't let diseases get going into your crop, otherwise you're going to have yield loss for sure. So again, when we're talking about diseases, it starts with a really good seed treatment. We want to make sure we've got good protection right on that seed. And then we've got 3 different timings we can spray during the season, or that we would recommend spraying during the season with fungicide on wheat.
Well, at herbicide timing, it's a great time to put a foliar fungicide right in when you're already out there spraying. Why not kill 2 birds with 1 stone and get 2 jobs done at the same time?
But are those foliar fungicides going to be good enough to stop stripe rust?
Well, it depends on which ones you're going to choose, of course. Now, some are going to be better than others. What we typically would do if we had some stripe rust in the area already, if you were, say, in the Pacific Northwest and they say, you know what, we had another mild winter, we had some survive, the universities are really watching for this kind of thing, then I would change up what I'd normally do. Because you may get by with something like just a straight propiconazole very early on, just for some tan spot help. But if you've got some stripe rust in your area, you may say, you know what, I better switch up. I'm going to go to Quilt or Stratego or one of those types of products, Twin Line, to try and get a combination.
Yeah, but you're probably not going to do that at herbicide timing. Twin Line, that's what I'd rather save that for when I have flag leaf. So what would you do herbicide timing? Probably just straight headline or quadrus or something like that, wouldn't you say?
Well, you certainly could, but again, it just depends on what kind of disease pressure you have, because most of these products get lumped into one category of, oh, it's a strobilurin. Okay, well then it must be similar to what headline is. Well, there are some differences. Some diseases, quadrus may be better on than headline, and vice versa.
Yeah, but all these products are pretty darn good on stripe rust and many of the other diseases as long as you're spraying ahead of time. So again, our 3 timings are going to be herbicide timing, flag leaf, and then at heading. And at heading, that's when you're going to have to switch to a straight triazole product, something like Prosaro or Caramba. Those products will be great on stripe rust or other rusts, but they'll also give you fairly decent activity on head scab.
And you can't use the strobilurins anymore. So headline, quadrus, Avito, you can't use those at heading because you'll increase the vomitoxin levels or the DON levels in your wheat.
Okay, so the reason why we're bringing this up today, I realize it's going to be a while before you're spraying a fungicide, but we wanted you to be thinking about varieties that you might pick for your farm. Some of them have more tolerance to certain diseases than others. So if you're going to be planting spring wheat anytime soon and you're thinking about varieties, just try to pick ones that have good disease tolerance, and then this is less of an issue, but you still have to keep scouting and be prepared to spray a fungicide.
Another thing you may be scouting for is our Weed of the Week. Can you identify this week's weed?
The Weed of the Week is sponsored by the Enlist Weed Control System from Dow AgroSciences, a new herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate.
You work to protect your farm's legacy and to keep it going. Introducing the Enlist Weed Control System, an advanced herbicide and trait system that will build on glyphosate for exceptional control of tough weeds. The next chapter begins.
Our weed of the week is carpetweed. Let's face it, Darren, this is not the most difficult weed to control that we've ever had on Ag PhD here. I think if you just have a good crop canopy, you're not going to have much carpetweed out
Well,
there.
that's the big thing. If you can get your crop to fill in and not let that sunlight get down, carpetweed's going to have a real tough time going. So carpetweed, if you use a pre-emerge herbicide, you're going to wipe it out before it's even popping out of the ground. That's the best way to go.
Well, what would you use in, like, let's say corn, pre-emerge?
Well, in corn, I like Sure Start and Triple Flex the best. I think they're going to do a really nice job. If you have to do some burn down, Verdict is awesome. Sharpen, as you'll hear in other crops, does a great job burning down carpetweed.
Soybeans? Pre?
Well, in soybeans, I really like Authority MTZ. Now, Treflan and Prowl do a nice job too, and if you follow our recommendation to use either 2 or 3 pre-emerge herbicides in soybeans, that's our standard recommendation anywhere soybeans are grown. Use a combination of something like Prowl and Authority MTZ. You're going to do an awesome job on carpetweed and many other weeds.
Okay, post-emerge, here's my problem with carpetweed. When I look at this plant, those leaves are really pretty small, and it's going to be kind of difficult to get a lot of spray on the leaves. So you want to have small droplets. Don't be going out with great big droplets or anything like that. So maybe up your water a little bit and increase your pressure, get the droplet size just a little bit smaller to get a little better coverage. What products would you use?
Well, just to go further on that, here's the problem with carpetweed. It can root down at the nodes. So if you just kill part of the plant and don't get great coverage, now you can just root down again and start another whorl, and it grows low to the ground. It has smooth leaves, no hairs on the leaves or stem. It's tough to stick product to that. So post-emerge in corn, I like Status the best. In soybeans, I like adding Flexstar or Cobra to any of my post-emerge broadleaf killers. In wheat, I like Addition Broad Spec, especially when tank mixed with Wide Match.
Well, once again, our weed of the week is carpetweed. Just do what you can to get a good pre on and have a great stand so you have nice crop canopy, and carpetweed shouldn't be an issue on your farm.
That's all the time we have for this week's weed, but Iron Talk is coming up next.
Iron Talk is brought to you by Case IH.
What are farmers doing to feed the planet? They're using Quadtrek technology, soil management, and planting systems from Case IH to foster a better growing environment that maximizes yield potential. Visit caseih.com to be ready.
If you don't want to miss a beat this planting season, make sure your software is up to date. We'll discuss in today's Iron Talk. It never fails. I'll be working with someone who's trying to plant or trying to spray, and they're having trouble with their computer control system. Well, it's really no surprise that computers have problems from time to time. Many of those problems can be eliminated by keeping your software up to date. At least once a year, most of the computer control systems and other software you use on the farm will have an update. It's up to you to get this done before you start running into problems and losing valuable time in the field. About half of the updates now are available online, so you don't have to leave your home or office to get those. However, there's still about half of the companies that want you to come to your dealer in order to update the software. Fortunately, almost all of these updates are free. You just have to take the time to do them now so you don't have problems in the field down the road. That's all for today's Iron Talk, and now back to the show. Don't miss this year's free Ag PhD Winter Workshops. At Ag PhD, we're all about helping you raise better crops and earn more money on your farm. We'll talk about drought-proofing your crop, weed and rootworm resistance, how to improve your fertility program, and on-farm trials and field tests. We'll also tell you the good and bad about the new products and technologies on the market, and give you our recommendations for pest control and a host of different crops. You'll get some insights on new farm regulations and tax laws going forward, and as always, you'll receive a free agronomy manual. Learn more and sign up today at agphd.com.
You expect a lot from this seed, and as it grows through each stage of development, Agroculture Liquid Fertilizers is there, feeding your crop exactly what it needs when it needs it. So no matter how you fertilize, no matter when, AgroLiquid efficiently brings all the nutrients your crop needs for a great harvest. From 1 kernel in the ground to 600 on the ear. For better yields and better quality, Agroculture Liquid Fertilizers.
Speed, strength, and efficiency make Capello corn heads a head above the rest. Built with polymer components that exceed industry standards, Capello corn heads continue to push the boundaries for maximizing grain retention while using less energy. Visit CapelloUSA.com and learn more about Capello's state-of-the-art chopping technology that cuts cleaner, allowing your horsepower to remain where it belongs, with your combine, so you can harvest faster in all weather conditions. Add to that an amazing folding feature, and it's clear to see why Capello is a head above the rest.
Micronutrients are not optional for plants, they are essential. TJ Micromix is a profit-proven management tool that ensures the availability of essential secondary and micronutrients. Formulated as a dry granule or liquid, TJ Micromix is plant available, easy to mix and apply. The synergistic fertilizer mix delivers consistent yield response on a variety of crops by complementing an NPK fertilizer program. Maximize yield on your farm this season. Call TJ Technologies or your fertilizer dealer and get your TJ Micromix today.
There are more mouths to feed than ever before. What are farmers doing to meet the challenge? They're using agronomically designed equipment from Case IH. Our Quadtrac technology, soil management, and planting systems are designed to foster a better growing environment that helps farmers maximize yield potential. And our deep understanding of agriculture is preparing them for the challenges ahead. Will you be ready?
I'm ready.
Go to caseih.com to learn more.
Closed captioning for Ag PhD is sponsored by Norwood Sales.
The all-new S-Cube commercial tender is the only tender on the market with poly tanks, giving you the capability to haul seed, fertilizer, water, or liquid fertilizer. Each cube can hold 300 units of seed, 2,000 gallons of liquid, or 300 cubic feet of fertilizer. Options include full functioning wireless remote, stainless steel conveyors, and self-contained hydraulics. Get yours today at Norwood Sales.
That's all the time we have for today's show, but be sure to join us again next time for another Weed of the Week, Iron Talk, Farm Basics, and a whole lot more. I'm Brian Hefty.
And I'm Darren Hefty. Thanks for watching Ag PhD.
Can you increase your field's topsoil layer by reducing tillage, planting high residue crops, utilizing cover crops, and adding manure to the soil? Topsoil can be rebuilt. For more information, visit the Responsible Nutrient Management Foundation at rnmf.org.